And we are live. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another collective Hotelier Pulse session in collaboration with Great Hotels of the World and Guest Centric. We got a great guest joining us today, Daniella Boeken from Ruby Hotels. Daniella is the Group Vice President of Commercial, as well as a member of the Executive Board. So Daniella, wonderful to have you joining us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. I'm very happy to be here as well.
Excellent. Wonderful. And of course, Pedro, I don't think you need any further introductions, Pedro. Everybody knows you these days. How are you?
I'm very good. And thank you, Andre, for the nice intro. Like everybody knows me. I hope we're getting new people on the show. I hope we're getting new people on the show that know me. And thank you, Daniella, for being part of this effort to help share some data and some best practices in the industry.
Absolutely. And I'll also just get started by also making sure everyone is reminded that if you have any questions, please make sure you pop them into the comments section and tag who you'd like the question to be addressed to, whether it be Daniella or Pedro. And of course, Leah will put in the links for the guest for the survey, for the Hotelier Pulse survey. And we certainly would encourage hoteliers out there to contribute to that, because as usual, the more data that is collected, the richer the report is. And of course, the link to download the report will be made available as well. Okay, so why don't we get started? Let me just bring up this month's report as well into the picture, Pedro. And I'd like to perhaps, I guess, start by asking Daniella yourself, based on the last edition of the report, it was noticed that booked nights for March of 2021 outgrew March of last year, which is a good sign. It's actually outgrew by 14%. But clearly there's still a way to go before we reach 2019 levels. So I'd like to ask and open up with Daniella, how are your hotels experiencing the steady recovery of hotel bookings in the 12 months since the pandemic has obviously affected the industry and become the global crisis that it is?
Yeah, so Ruby Hotels has mainly city center hotels, and March last year, that was actually the month where everything started and where we got cancellation after cancellations from different congresses. And we've had such a strong cancellation wave in March 2020, where we had about as many room nights canceled within a month as we picked up in the entire month in 2019. So if we now compare our bookings in March 2021 to March 2020, they are much better than we had in 2020, because we just had this drastic cancellation wave. And if we're talking about percentages, we might be talking about more than 2,500% of increase in bookings in comparison to last year. So that's probably not really representative, or because it were just such abnormal numbers. But what Ruby does see is a continuous growth of bookings. So that's really great. We've actually, looking back at the past year, we've seen a very positive trend between the first and the second lockdown, where we got a pickup very quickly, and our bookings really indicated a quick recovery. The second lockdown for us has been a lot tougher, which I assume for many hoteliers. But the beginning of the year, in terms of booked room nights, that started very, very positive again. And then we had a bit of a dip in February, and then March increased again. So March looked a lot better again. And now as well in April, we are seeing a really growing trend in terms of booked room nights. So that is definitely looking great.
Yeah, that's excellent. And Pedro, you've got some statistics up on the screen as well. Is this reflecting what Daniella's seeing as well?
Absolutely, and I think sort of the report was done at the beginning of April or so. In the meantime, April is also almost complete, and we're seeing that actually the trend that started in March is looking very, very positive in April actually. And if you look here, what we're seeing here is the bookings per channel. It's same star comparison, so it's always the same hotels. And we can see here, that that obviously, we were at a very different level in 2019 than the big crash that we had in 2020. We sort of recovered up to early 2020 numbers at the peak of the summer last year, and then we had sort of the tail off again with the second lockdown. And it seems that things have been going up, and actually this trend has been getting stronger and stronger over the last few weeks, mostly driven initially by domestic travel, but we're starting to see international travel also peaking up a little bit, and that's quite interesting. So we're very optimistic right now for the summer, considering that there's going to be ability to travel, right? I think the big challenge is going to be, are there going to be travel restrictions in place? Are the Brits, the Germans, the Scandinavians going to be able to travel? And how much air capacity is there going to be between the US and Europe? So I think in the US, pretty much COVID is over, if you believe it or not. So we're seeing, booking paces above 2019, and actually we're also seeing occupancy levels trending up. So clearly, if we can get the vaccination going in Europe, we're going to see also a little bit of that coming into effect here.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it, how much of an impact the vaccine has had now in the US market generally, because as you said, it's almost like it's business as usual back there. I mean, obviously it's not, but it is certainly in a lot better health and condition than, let's say, we are at the moment here in Europe.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
Interesting on this chart as well, Pedro, I see the stark difference between Booking and Expedia. It seems like Booking's picked up against the direct as well, because direct was kind of having a small win the last few weeks, and now they've really kind of reined that back in, haven't they?
Yeah, so now please take into account that obviously some of these bookings are still going to be canceled, right? So this is on the books, sort of. It's not on the books because it's based on book data, but it is. We have to take always the Booking.com numbers with a grain of salt because of that, because obviously they experience significant cancellation rates, which typically we don't see in direct bookings. But if going back to Daniella's point, here is, let me see if I can make this bigger. I don't know why this is showing so small. This is actually day by day bookings, and you can see that from the beginning of March we've been seeing an upward trend, very consistently going up and up and up, and that's really encouraging. And if you look here, we're actually already almost at top of the pandemic tops, let's say, right, of the summer of last year. So I think the next few weeks are going to be very telling if we see this keep going up, or if we're going to stabilize at this level like we did in the summer of last year. So I think it's to some extent I'm very optimistic, because we're seeing also, for instance, on our Great Hotels of the World business, we're seeing that actually we're getting again group inquiries, mostly for the end of this year and the second quarter of next year. But group inquiries are coming through again. So the GDS is also starting to move a little bit. So I think overall there's an optimism in the industry. Let's see if it holds, right? That's always, it's a very funny thing. I think we have a monthly board meeting, and during the pandemic we actually had it twice a month. But in the last board meeting, one of my board members said, well, it's interesting because, at the end of last summer, we said, let's hope that the next board meeting will know more. And we're still saying that, right? We'll say, we hopefully next month we'll know more. So we're still month by month here.
Yeah. And Daniella, I was just going to ask you, Daniella, from Ruby's perspective, has direct been a channel that you've actively focused on more in the last few months, or have you kind of been looking at it from a broader perspective in terms of your channel distribution?
So direct has always been a very strong focus for us as a brand, of course. We've also taken the last year as an opportunity to refresh our website a little bit, to generate more bookings. We've definitely seen a trend in more web direct bookings, which are increasing a lot. I do have to say that Booking is coming very strong behind as well in pace. Expedia is a lot slower in terms of pickup in comparison to 2019, for instance. But that's also because Expedia had a lot of international travel, so more US market, which might come back. Who knows by the summer, because there's a lot of rumors that the US is actually lifting travel bans to Europe for all those that are vaccinated. So I think that would be a very positive message for Europe, definitely in the summer. And
agreed.
Yeah, I think last week or the last few weeks have actually been filled with very positive messages, where the Netherlands has opened their outside gastronomy. In Austria, they've already opened restrictions last month, and now also the Nordics are opening. The UK is following next month. France is also lifting restrictions. So there's really a lot happening again. Germany, where I'm based, is moving the other direction, which is not that great. But I hope that we get past that as well. So I think that's where a lot of impact on our demand is on the one side is the restrictions, of course, on the other side is the different segments. So the restrictions will look a lot better in the origin and destination regions this summer. But of course, especially for city center hotels, the summer is not always the greatest month, right? So that's where we also very much focus on business travelers coming back by September, where we also see our group pace increasing again from September onwards. And then there's this very important segment for us, which is congress business, and that might need a bit longer to really fully return.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One thing we've seen in the report as well is obviously occupancy expectations in April 21 are looking better than the month before. CRS data has shown that occupancy for this month has outgrown the same period versus last year. But interestingly, city hotels expect the highest occupancy levels in April, which obviously we're in. So have you noticed that as well in Ruby's city hotels, particularly perhaps in partially reopened hubs such as London? And if so, what do you think is the main driver behind that?
Yes, definitely. April is a lot stronger now than we were last year. We had also more hotels closed last year than we had this year. So we need to say that as well. And I think that's what you see in the market in general as well, that there were quite a few hotels that very abruptly closed end of March last year or in April last year, and are slowly reopening now this March or April. In hubs such as London, there is definitely an increase in business again. However, the press is very strongly communicating that travel and hotels are allowed from the 17th of May onwards, and currently not yet. And that, I think, has a strong impact on those traveling as well. There are many hotels in London still closed. There are some hotels that have great occupancies, some hotels that are open. But talking about the market occupancy in London, we're only at about 10% perhaps. If we're then in comparison looking at Zurich, for instance, Zurich has a year-to-date occupancy of 25 to 30% in the entire market, which is amazing in comparison to many other cities. So I think that's a very great sign of how travel continues. Yeah.
Indeed. Pedro, there's a chart here. You want to talk through that as well?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I think what this chart, if I look at it from afar, what this chart is showing us is that people are getting a little bit more optimistic, right? The expectation for occupancy is always very low in our surveys, as you can see. Resorts are obviously a little bit more optimistic, or were a bit more optimistic, given that they had a reasonable, considering everything that was going on in 2020, they had a reasonable summer. But I do think that we are starting to see pickup in some city center hotels. And we are also starting to see some pickup in international bookings, and people are getting more confident. So that's really what I see here, is that, bed and breakfasts are sort of stable at, this is not the high season for them, right? And certainly the resorts, they're going to get more stuff in the summer. But city center hotels are starting to see some movement, and I think that's positive.
Definitely. Someone just shut a door. Excellent. Okay, so Daniella, you mentioned as well before that you, as a group, don't expect the corporate or the business travel to come back until perhaps late this year. What are your expectations for summer overall? Do you still think that there may be a chance that international travel perhaps will resume this year, given that the United States will open up? But apart from that area, do you see any other perhaps opportunities on international travel?
Yeah, well, with regards to business travel, that is basically the main segment that we are having right now, right? Because in many markets, there's only business travel allowed and not leisure travel. But that's really the more smaller companies or the projects that really can't be done from home office. With regards to the summer, I think the outlook is very positive, with so many countries lifting their restrictions. And even when the US is lifting their travel ban, I think that's a very, very positive outlook. International travel, if you're talking about the Vienna market, for instance, that market is very much dependent on German travel, and the train ride from Munich to Vienna is a lot shorter than driving from Munich to Hamburg. So in that sense, we'll have definitely international travel again. The long haul travel, that might take a bit longer.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, obviously, where you mentioned earlier as well, Germany, for example, is still kind of in a difficult position at the moment, where we're currently still in a lockdown. In fact, we have a curfew in place. Are you hearing, as a brand overall, anything outside of the industry that gives you some kind of indication that vaccination progression is increasing, that it's looking like it's going to start to be more, I guess, wider spread across the country, that will then hopefully start to lighten or open things up again? Is there any kind of word that you're hearing from inside sources at all that you might be able to share?
Yes, definitely. That's actually a movement from the last couple of weeks, where some bigger cities have made AstraZeneca available for everyone, because that is a vaccination which was so bad in the press that they have too much of it currently, of course. And I've actually known quite a lot of people that are quite young as well, that have already been vaccinated with AstraZeneca and have been able to get appointments. There's now more and more people that get appointments through their general practitioners as well, also with different vaccinations. Yeah, I really see a difference there in the last few weeks.
Pedro, are you seeing it as well in your area? I mean, obviously you're based in Portugal, but I know you also have a lot of contact in other areas. So
again, I think probably going back, I was just getting this report done here. The most relevant is really what we're seeing is in the US, right, where vaccination really has basically ended COVID, and you can look here that we're way above, normal numbers for the same period. So there is this trend of, I would say, revenge travel potentially happening, because when vaccination goes well, we'll see. We have to wait and see. I'm not sure I answered your question, to be very honest.
No, that's fine. It was really, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, with so much of a positive result out of the US vaccination program, I'm wondering if there's any insider type of news that we might be hearing from organizations or associations that they might have heard, from government sources that might give a kind of inclination in terms of when things might start to loosen up a little bit?
No, I think what, at least what we're seeing in most of the European countries, is that people are putting in place some sort of schedule to give some sort of predictability and visibility into the future. And so far, I think the countries that have done so have been able to meet the schedules. So people are opening up gradually, unlike the US, right, where there really was never sort of there were partial lockdowns, like schools were locked down, but actually businesses were working and so on. I think in Europe, it's been more of a really shut down, lockdown sort of mentality and a slow opening. The question is the speed of opening going to be, fast enough to make up for the summer? But I do believe that, when we get back into the fall, we're going to be starting to look at more of a normal sort of scenario then. And I'm with Daniella, and maybe we'll start seeing some corporate travel back, because we are seeing GDS bookings now. And are we going to start seeing groups? And we have confirmed some groups for the fall. Now, obviously, all of this is tentative. One of the things that we have to be very clear, on the books means very little right now, right? Because it's only on the books once people have checked out, then it's truly on the books. But I think the signals are there that we're going to have, hopefully a more normal 2022 for sure. But 2021 is still going to be difficult, and we're still going to be seeing, some, like what's happening in India right now, right? It's, more of this is going to happen. So there's going to be certain source markets that are going to be opening and shutting. I think the domestic markets are going to remain fairly open through the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Now, you also had another slide on before this one as well. Did you want to talk through that at all?
Sure.
I think that was showing revenues, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is obviously this was done in March, and I'm very curious to see how this has changed in April. But it's sort of curious that people are either going to say that they're going to be better off or worse off, and none of them are, or very few, 10% only, are saying that 2021 is going to be the same as 2020. Which I think as the year progresses, we're going to start to consolidate on a trend. Is it really going to be 50-50, that 50% of hotels are going to be better off and 50% of hotels are going to be worse off, or is it more like a significant chunk, like we thought in February, said it's really a wash? In 2020 we lost March, April, May, June. In 2021 we lost January, February, March, April. May is the big question, right? So if May comes in, we're seeing that April is going to come in probably at 22-24% of 2019. May is going to be sort of what, in my opinion, is going to be the deciding factor whether we're going to have a better or a worse 2021 than 2020. So I'm very curious about where we're going to be when we talk next month.
Yeah, should be interesting. Okay, and in terms of just for the audience, again, please don't forget, if you're a hotelier, to make sure that you contribute to that survey. The link layer can put that into the comments section, as well as the URL for you also download the report and have access to the full report. Okay, so this slide here, Pedro, is showing us the estimate business recovery, same financial position versus 2019. So you're looking into
right.
Yeah.
So when we ask this, a very few say that 2021 is going to be equal to 2019, and so pretty much 90% of everybody says that they're going to be worse off than in 2019. And I think sort of the worrying sign here is that more people, increasingly more people are saying 2023, right? And so we'll see. But I think overall people have come to grips that this is not going to be just, we're going to go back to where we were. We're also seeing some sort of interesting trends in the US that may be relevant to the audience. Like, hotels are reopening, but they're reopening with less staff. And actually, a lot of people are thinking that a lot of things that were not automated should be automated. because of this open close, and nobody knows where the margin's really going to be, i.e. what is the long-term occupancy that we're going to experience at these hotels. So how much staff can I really throw at the problem, and how much automation should I throw at the problem to sort of lower my fixed operational cost when the hotel is open. So I think that there are some really interesting things happening, and some of the smarter groups are using the time to sort of make some shifts towards direct bookings, towards more automation in revenue management, and so on and so forth. So I do believe that we're going to be looking back, say in 2023, to the pandemic and say, it was very hard to get through it, but overall, as an industry, we're better prepared for the future because of it.
Yeah. Well, look, if you're looking at it from a silver lining perspective, every opportunity has a silver lining, and hoteliers, I guess, we're kind of hearing they seem to be less concerned with previously dominated issues that have perhaps impacted consumer demand, such as health and safety concerns or tighter consumer budgets, and even flight capacity. So as such, hoteliers kind of continue to prioritize reshaping their marketing strategies. And Daniella, I'd be very curious to hear how Ruby have gone about that, but also how they've approached it to reach new markets and to cater for the domestic traveler. So do you agree with that sentiment? And how has Ruby Hotels used this downtime to strengthen your position with restrictions, or once restrictions are lifted, to make way for this pent-up travel, or this revenge travel demand that we're so anticipating and expecting?
Yes, so Ruby's lean luxury philosophy stands for luxury at affordable pricing. So in this way, we can offer affordable products only by very lean structures and automating processes to the maximum. So we strongly focus on contactless technologies, or technologies in general. For instance, our check-in process happens through a check-in kiosk, so there's not a receptionist that needs to do that manually. So our reception is combined with a bar, and our hosts have therefore more time to focus on the guest experience than on administrative duties such as checking in a guest into the PMS or handling payments. Our payments are also done automatically, and therefore there's no checkout process needed. So that also saves time again. A guest just automatically receives their bill upon departure by email. So it saves time for the guest, but also for the hotel itself. We've also last year introduced cashless payments. So all the payments that do still happen in the hotel and don't happen automatically, they are only by card or by contactless payments. So at check-in at the bar, even at our vending machines, we don't accept any cash anymore, and we handle everything contactless.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, please continue. I'll ask you the next question when you're finished. Sorry.
All right. Yes. So we've been focusing on many different automation topics, of course, and the difficult decision in a pandemic is always what different projects or new projects do you actually start or continue, and what don't you, because there's no cash flow, but there's a lot of time. So that's always a difficult issue. We've, for instance, upgraded our PMS for all of our hotels. So this was a very large project where we've looked at every single process during the guest journey and during the reservation process, to make sure we can automate as much as possible and don't have to have a huge back office doing manual work. This also increased our analysis possibilities, but also our yielding possibilities, and also, for instance, the automated payment options as well. We've given our website a new look to boost also mobile visitors, for instance. And that's, of course, an ongoing process because we live in such a digital age that we need to upgrade our website almost on a yearly basis. So that's always something ongoing. But we are also preparing for sustainable travel, or to to increase our ecological footprint, where we've introduced Ruby Green, which is a guest can exchange a room cleaning for a cocktail at the bar. And this already saves 42 liters of water for just one room cleaning. So that's pretty...
certainly take a few cocktails to reach the equivalent of that, wouldn't it?
Exactly, yes.
So you mentioned that you've put in a new PMS, and you also spoke about contactless and cashless payments. Have you always had, like pre-pandemic, did you have contactless payments in place, or sorry, cashless payments in place, as well as contactless solutions? No. Or is that something that you also introduced during the time? So basically what I'm getting at, did you do a kind of a tech stack refresh throughout this downtime, or did you kind of just pick up certain areas that you still needed, that you were working on over a bigger picture kind of project?
Well, our philosophy in general has always been to automate processes as much as possible and be as digital as much as possible. And that's, I think, a reason why Ruby can weather this storm or this pandemic pretty well. Of course, we've taken the time over the last year to increase these processes even better, because digitalization or automation, you can always improve or do even better. So the check-in, the automated check-in was already there pre-pandemic, but the cashless payment we've introduced at the start of the pandemic, for instance.
Okay, great. It's so great to hear another, obviously a major hotel brand here in Germany anyway, is reviewing their technology, reviewing their website, their booking engine. We had Steffi on from Meininger the last session, and she also said the same thing. They've renewed their PMS, and you guys have also taken the opportunity to review technology and to, improve on things when you had the opportunity. So I think that's, again, hats off to you. I think that it's great to hear. It really is. It's good. It's very positive news.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important topic, because everyone knows that the hotel industry is far behind in technology in comparison to other industries. So we maybe we even needed this pandemic to kind of try and catch up on certain things, especially in the e-commerce business. Yeah.
Right. Now, just one other question before I turn to Pedro for that next slide. You spoke about yes, web pages need to be reviewed pretty much on an annual basis now, but when it comes to the booking engine side of things, did you make many adjustments to your booking engine in this downtime as well, or is that stayed fairly relative?
We make continuous adjustments to our booking engine, but we didn't change our booking engine in such. But because of the automated check-in, we need to include and increase a lot of possibilities to make sure that we automate in booking engine. And also, of course, with the connection of a new PMS, there were quite a few changes that we needed to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So what have we got here, Pedro? A direct channel breakdown?
I was just trying to sort of, relate back to Daniella and what she was saying in terms of mobile, and we're really seeing mobile has been growing very, very steadily in importance over the course of the last few years. In 2020, we saw a big spike, which we've discussed here, and you can see there that after the lockdown, it went up almost to 30% of all nights booked on our CRS in terms of direct were mobile bookings. And we're back to that, right? We're in the 25% to 30% range. So it's really important that the mobile experience is working. We're also seeing, I don't have those graphs, but we also are seeing that, about 25% of all direct bookings, right, in terms of number of reservations, are either for today or tomorrow. And that's, this short-term booking, this short window, it's really critical to optimize your mobile bookings to make sure that you can take advantage of that short-term demand. And so the booking experience has to be slightly different and more optimized and more streamlined, because if you're on a phone, you really don't have all the capacities that you have on a desktop. And therefore, that would be my encouragement, would be for hotels to review their mobile bookings, to try to book tonight or to try to book tomorrow night and see, you know, how long does that take? How many clicks? Are there things along the customer journey that can be optimized so that they can capture this short-term demand? Because I think these short booking windows are here to stay, right? There's so much uncertainty into, let's say, into the next 12 months, right? That people will continue to book, you know, short term, because they don't know if is the vaccination passport going to be available or not? Are they going to be able to get me a refund, or are they going to get me a credit? I already have so many credits from so many things that I booked. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty on the consumer side. So I think we need to try to, you know, if you want to capture demand, you need to be optimized for short-term bookings. That's what I believe.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think it's also very important to make it easy for the guests to not having to look for your credit card number once again, but to kind of be able to save or log in or have all the data of your address, your personal data ready there that you can book with 2 clicks and be done with it. And I think that is a reason why still many people like to book on Booking.com, because the profile is there and they can just book any hotel. And if we can just align with that and make it easy for guests, I think we win a lot.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, great. We have a question here from Rita, who's asked, she's from Great Hotels of the World, and she's asking, Daniella, are you seeing any movement in small meetings or events in your hotels at all? And if so, are there any particular destinations?
So I do have to say there that Ruby doesn't have the typical meeting rooms. So we basically cater for groups without meeting rooms. We have, next to hotels, we have workspaces as well, where we have some meeting rooms, but that's really the small meeting rooms that still are in demand. Really large meeting rooms is not something we offer.
Okay, cool. And we also have a question here from, no, that's okay, no problems at all. We also have a question here from our very own Leah. She's asked, many hotels report that the pandemic accelerated automation of their processes and operations, and that technology solutions are leveraged increasingly to respond better to consumer expectations. Obviously, implementing contactless technologies, etc. So how is Ruby approaching as well? We kind of already covered that, haven't we? In terms of the way you're, you've been focusing on your tech stack, but is there any? Do you have any other plans for other technologies moving forward in this time as well, or would you say that you've kind of covered that now, that area now for now as such?
I wouldn't say that we're done. I think we're never done with these projects. What we're currently introduced is, for instance, guest messaging, where we have a lot more respondents on sending guests a pre-arrival email, because they're just on their phone up on check-in or during their stay, or up on checkout, after checkout, just sending personalized messages. Or asking for a hotel review, or offering special services, informing about this new great cocktail we've had, or in the future also the events that are going on in our bar, for instance. And guest messaging is, I think, a great way to increase the guest experience as well. There's many other projects that are currently ongoing that I'm happy to talk about when we've actually introduced them, but no, we're never fully done with improving our service and projects.
Very good. Pedro, this slide here, you're talking the scale of 1 to 7 in terms of direct bookings versus marketing spend and ADR.
Yeah, so I think this slide only shows good news in terms of people getting more optimistic, to be very honest. So people are saying direct bookings are increasing in importance, which means obviously more money in their pockets, and I think we've beaten that horse here. And but I also think that people are more optimistic in terms of marketing spend for the future and in terms of holding ADR. So I think overall the sentiment in the industry is that we're turning the corner a little bit on the pandemic now, and therefore things are going to ease up a little bit. The only other thing that I wanted to go back to is domestic versus international and leisure versus business. Business has hit sort of the all-time low in our report in terms of expectation of who contribution to recovery, and that's sort of a negative thing for city center hotels with strong business focus. I do believe that there are some other alternatives that people are looking at right now, like leisure groups and leisure series and stuff like that. So I think people will need to diversify a little bit their sales and marketing strategy, which is really what I think our hoteliers are also telling us here somewhere. In terms of coming up with special offers and packages, and looking at what are they doing with the sales and marketing strategy and shaping offers around local markets. So I do believe that these three strategies, which have been stable from the March edition now to the April edition, are going to be sort of the priorities going forward.
Yeah. Excellent. Daniella, have you also within Ruby yourselves, how have you structured your rates in terms of, for example, offering special offers and packages for recovery now? Have you looked at reviewing that type of strategy from that side, or is it have you kept your rates kind of as they were throughout the last 12 months?
No, we constantly try new things, to be honest. So we've changed different offers and packages, but also try out new channels because there's happened quite a bit with different distribution channels. And I think we need to be very quick to focus on the destination market. So currently we really need to focus on this local business, the small businesses that are still allowed to travel. And as soon as leisure travel becomes allowed, we need to focus very strongly on staycation. After that, we can focus on more international travel. So we very much need to be aligned with the government restrictions currently.
Yeah. We have a question as well here from an audience member, Moroni van Ardenen. Thanks for joining us, Moroni. Great to have you. Question here is, do you agree that leisure will be more important? Daniella, would you like to start with that one?
I think we saw it trend pre-pandemic already, that the mix between business and leisure is becoming stronger, right? And I think that's only increased now, where we actually have seen in our hotels that bar spendings per guest have increased a lot, and where we actually see that there's a lot of leisure time happening with groups of business guests that are enjoying to socialize again and to travel and be out and about again. So I think there's a very strong mixture happening between business and leisure, and we cannot really fixedly say anymore you're here only for business, because it will always be a bit of a mixture.
Pedro, if I may add to that, I have to thank Moroni. I don't know Moroni, but thank you, Moroni, for the question.
I do, actually.
Given that at Great Hotels of the World, when we launched the brand or relaunched the brand, right? The brand has been around for a while, but we bought it in 2018 and then we relaunched it. We relaunched it around the pleasure experience, which means that the new corporate traveler doesn't want to sit by a highway in a big box. They want to be in city center hotels where they can have some fun while they're working, right? And I think that's sort of the concept for Great Hotels of the World. So I do believe that the pandemic is going to even make that further. So where a lot of people now, whereas before the pandemic probably it was impossible to tell your boss to say, hey, I'm going to spend a week at the Maldives. But I'm going to be working 3 days out of the 5, right? And your boss would say, this is not going to work for me, right? I think this is possible nowadays, that you can go to, very exotic destinations, work from there, and everybody will trust that you're going to be online and doing your job. So I do believe that this trend is going to be getting stronger in the sense of, Either you take some time of the day to work from your hotel, and then you take half a day off. And companies are going to be a lot more flexible with this, also with their corporate policy. So I do believe that there's probably an uphill battle here in terms of duty of care, insurance, liability, and a bunch of things that companies will have to work through from an HR perspective. But I do think that a lot of hotels that really didn't have corporate travelers per se now do have to have good internet, good facilities to print stuff if people need to print stuff and stuff like that you need in a corporate hotel. So I do think that corporate hotels are the ones that are in good city center locations and are fun, they're going to be in good shape for the upturn.
Yeah. Excellent. And I think this slide you're showing as well is a good indication of that as well. When you look at, for example, staycations, sustainable tourism, they're all showing positive signs. Interestingly, contactless technology slightly dropping off there for April, in the April edition. Yeah. Minor, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's not the case for Ruby, I have to say. Working from hotel, perhaps, but we are definitely focusing on contactless technology and direct channel as well, of course.
Yeah, excellent. We have a question as well here for both of you. There's a lot of talk about subscription/membership-based hotel offers. What's your take on that, Daniella?
So we've seen that those guests that are returning are the members or the loyal guests that knew Ruby before, and that's, I think, the reason why our direct channel is doing so well. So we are very much focusing on our members or our loyal guests to make sure that they return, that they travel to new destinations as well. And I think they are more important than they've been before.
Yeah.
So, I think we've had this conversation a few months ago, and I think that's wishful thinking. There's a lot of wishful thinking in the industry. I don't see people really signing up to spend thousands of euros a year on hotels, unless they're getting really a super, super deal, which I don't think hotels are willing to give either. And I think it would be the wrong thing to do. So while there's a lot of talk, I'm still not seeing it. But I may be wrong. I've been wrong before. But I'm not seeing somebody, signing up for a €1,000 or a €2,000 package that will give me 10 nights or 20 nights or something like that. And I can use them at any hotel at great hotels of the world. Let's use our brand, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't think that that's going to happen. And I think, as Daniella was saying, the loyal guests, they're already engaging with hotels to get either some sort of, deal, whether it's an upgrade, instead of staying in a standard room to go to the superior room, or the free breakfast or whatever. So I think that the corporate guests also negotiate that through negotiated rates and so on. So all of that is sort of already in place. And I just don't see a subscription model being attractive enough for the guest to make it work, to be very honest, at this stage.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. A subscription model that doesn't really work. But what hotels need to focus on is that the guests want to return to this actual brand. Right?
Exactly.
That they, on the guest journey, on the entire guest experience. So rather than a pre-bought offer, it's about satisfaction, I think, the most.
And maybe brands like Selina and maybe some of the more experienced or oriented brands could sell, an annual subscription where you could stay a year and travel the world and stay at Selina around the world. So maybe that, I think that sort of thing, experience level, could work. Like we used to have tickets around the world for airlines, right? Where you could buy a ticket and you could, just jump around the world for, an enormous amount of money, but you had a lot of flexibility there. So I think that, the larger brands may come with those sorts of things because people can work from anywhere. But, subscription, the sense of Netflix for hotels, I think it's going to be very difficult to pull off, to be very honest.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, guys, we're coming up to our time. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind the audience again, for the final time, to make sure, if you're a hotelier, that you subscribe to the report, get a copy of the report, but also please contribute to the survey. It's really valuable information that we can then collate and then produce these reports. And yeah, I mean, Daniella, any final words from you before we wrap up?
I'm very much looking forward to this entire pandemic being over, and I think the industry has been shaken up by now to look more innovative into the future. So I'm very much looking forward to see what's going to happen. Thanks a lot, Andre and Pedro.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you again. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Pedro, any final words from you before we wrap up?
I think we're in a good place right now, actually. I have maybe one more piece of data to share, which is these are the people that are booking international travel on our CRS. So people that are booking hotels, and it's the usual suspects. So it's some sense of normalcy returning that I think is coming our way. Maybe not at the level that we would like it to be, and maybe not at the speed that we would like it to be, but I think some sense of normalcy is coming back. And I'm looking forward to going through the summer, just like Daniella, looking forward to a much better winter than we had last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all looking forward to that. Okay, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you join us again next month for the next report. And as I said, please, if you're a hotelier, make sure you get the report and contribute to the survey. So until next time, it's bye for now. Thanks very much.